Who are you beneath your mask?
Is my costume such a disguise that you don't recognize me?
So you've come.
Yes, Prospero.
I would like to see your face.
There is no face of death.
I beg you do not mourn for Juliana. We should celebrate. She has just married a friend of mine.
Hello, and welcome to Comic Book Bears Presents The Bear Cave of Terror. I'm your hairy, heavy homo and horror fan host, Steve Morey. Each week, here in the Bear Cave, I invite a horror-loving guest who brings with them one of their favorite scary movies. It can be classic, gory, trashy, obscure, well-known, or something probably still banned in Britain. In other words, a thrilling work of cinematic terror that we think you might enjoy. In each episode, we'll dig into the flesh and bone of the film, highlighting our favorite scary moments, as well as stories and details from beyond the screen, all while our guest imparts their deep and possibly concerning love for this week's frightful vision unto you, our dear listener. And with us today, for the first time, is Mr. Rob Staeger. Welcome, Rob.
Hi, how are you, Steve?
I'm doing pretty well. How about yourself?
Oh, great. I'm very happy to be here.
And you are bringing with us, or with you today, a new film. Well, it's not that new time-wise, but it's definitely new to me. What film is that?
It's a 1964's Roger Corman movie, The Masque of the Red Death, starring Vincent Price and Hazel Court and Jane Asher. And it is kind of a pandemic movie from 1964.
It is. It really is. It fits so perfectly well with what we just recently experienced here.
Yeah, that's why I initially saw it. I'm seeing the Red Death in memes for like super spreader events, and I was like, let me see this movie.
I mean, that is a pretty good reason to go back and see a film like this, especially when you're experiencing something that it refers to, or something similar that it refers to. But yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, there are worse reasons to seek out a horror movie like this. So what would you say that this film generally is about? I mean, obviously, pandemic, sickness, illness. What else is happening in this movie?
Well, the Red Death is a plague. It's like the Black Plague. It is appearing all over the countryside, and Prince Prospero, who is Vincent Price, invites all the rich nobles he knows, or at least the ones he likes, to his castle for a party. They're going to just stay there and wait out the Red Death. And he's going to have entertainment. He's invited some peasants along, and then they don't come. They're like, we've just been told that we're being delivered from you. And it's a little shaky why he wants them there, but it's obviously to be sadistic to them as entertainment for his vile friends. He invites all these people to a party. They have a party. They humiliate and torture each other and other people that are there. And eventually they have a masquerade. And by the time the masquerade comes, the Red Death has infiltrated the party itself. And things go poorly for pretty much everyone.
Yeah. I'd say the kill count in this technically is pretty high.
Yeah.
When you consider how many people are involved, or how many people are in the castle, within the castle walls when the Red Death shows up.
Yeah, it's pretty much a good 95% of the cast. Why?
Yeah. Oh. But, and this is, of course, based on an Edgar Allan Poe story, The Masque of the Red Death. And it's Masque with Q-U-E because it's referring to the ball itself, to the masquerade, although the Red Death is wearing an actual M-A-S-K mask.
Yeah.
But, the story itself, it's a pretty short story, but Roger Corman did a really good job pulling this out and adding some extra stuff in there, and it was pretty cool. But I think a lot of this film kind of rides on the charisma of its main star, who is Mr. Vincent Price.
Yeah, Vincent Price is someone that I encountered first probably on the Brady Bunch. He played I believe, an archaeologist on the Brady Bunch. If I have it right, it was probably on the Hawaiian episodes. And he was just a presence from that. He was such an unusual character on that show. And then I knew him from commercials. There was a game called Stay Alive when I was a kid, which is just a game where you're pulling out plastic slots and there are marbles on the slots. Eventually, you want to have your color marble be the last one on the board. And then you can say Vincent Price's line in the commercial, which is, "I am the sole survivor." I'm sure you can find the Stay Alive commercials on YouTube, but they really made an impression on me. He made an impression on me. And I've started to see him in other movies when I was a kid, some mostly horror movies, mostly, things like The Abominable Dr. Phibes, House of Wax, which was in 3D, and things like that. But he didn't just make horror movies. He was kind of a heavy in like film noir and stuff for a while. He was, the one I remember was a color noir called Leave Her to Heaven. And I just saw this a few years ago at a film festival, and it's a fascinating movie. And he's just playing the boyfriend of someone. He's not one of the leads. He's just someone's boyfriend who you don't kind of want to get in the way of. You know, he's kind of like, oh, okay, this is a formidable guy. It's just a different vibe than you get from him in the horror movies, where he's still formidable, but in a different kind of way. You know, he doesn't look like he's carrying a gun.
Well, he definitely doesn't carry a gun in this movie. He more often carries a little mini crossbow and a falcon. Those are two of his instruments of death, if you will, in this. But yeah, I mean, I agree. He has this presence, and when he's on screen, it's magnetic. And the way he delivers his lines is very much in my head. You know, as a kid, I probably encountered Vincent Price first on like maybe the Thriller video, just the voice. And that voice is so unique. It's just Vincent Price. You can listen to it and say, like, that voice sends chills down your spine, but it's also just something that you can't turn away from. And here he is getting to kind of put that on full display, as well as, you know, being in some magnificent little costumes that really just kind of drive home this horror figure who is handsome and devilish in a very literal sense in this film, and just really, really sells it. He really sells the sadistic nature of Prince Prospero here. At which point in his career was he doing this? I mean, because this came out in like the 60s. Had he been doing horror for long before that?
I'm not sure what his first horror movie was. I think Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, which isn't, I mean, it's a monster movie. I'm not sure if it's a horror movie. But yeah, by the time of 1953, it's House of Wax, and then you get to like The Mad Magician, things I haven't seen. But The Fly, 1958 is The Fly.
That's right. I mean, I forgot that he was in that. And that was it's a pretty, I would say, famous horror movie. You know, he probably, I would think at that point was probably like, no, please don't typecast me as this horror character / victim / evil scientist.
Yeah.
But you know.
But 58 is The Fly, 59, Return of the Fly, along with The House on Haunted Hill. And The Tingler. The Tingler is the one where they put electrical wires in the seats. They would just shock the people watching the movie. And the only way to make the Tingler dormant and keep it from killing you is to scream. And so Vincent Price just straight out tells the audience, "Scream, everybody, scream!" And so you've got a whole theater full of screaming people in your horror movie. So what's a better advertisement than that?
Electrocution.
Yes.
You know, it's good entertainment.
Yeah. It was basically a joy buzzer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All these people getting buzzed, literally.
Yeah.
Oh, but that's cool. And, you know, the fact that he came back really to horror, with these Roger Corman directed Poe adaptations. I mean, this one, just looking up a little bit of it, was considered one of the best of those adaptations that Corman did, and working with Vincent Price. And a lot of that had to do with the look of it. And, if I were Vincent Price, I would be really excited to be in this beautiful, lush production with so much emphasis on color.
Yeah. Which
and design. Yeah.
Yeah. I imagine some of that some of it is from the Poe story, because Poe describes a series of rooms that are all different colors, lit from outside by braziers. And this one is yellow, this one is blue, whatever. And then the final one is black with a red window. That is duplicated in the movie. But also, I'm sure some of the emphasis on this color and the design is from cinematographer Nicholas Roeg, who had an amazing eye for that sort of thing.
Yeah. Just the rooms that Poe describes them. I think there's a few more rooms in the story than there is in the film. But Vincent Price, at one point, his captive is Francesca, the village girl. He's bringing her along, giving her a tour of the rooms. And like the first room, it's this yellow room. It's everything in it is yellow. And he's like, "Am I?" Father or grandfather, kept his political rival in here for years without letting him leave, like a prison. And then he moves on and it's another room. I think this one's like purple and everything's just purple. And then there's a white room. And then finally the black room. But he doesn't give her the tour of that yet. He's like, no, that's special. That's, it's not for you yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they've changed the room in this one. So instead of just being all black with a big clock in it, the clock's moved out to the main hall. But in this room, it's a temple, an altar to Satan.
Yes.
So it's like it's a room painted black with the red, and then there's like statues and a throne and like a coffin and just all sorts of accoutrement. But yeah, I mean the colors are so bright, they're so stark and jarring a lot of times.
Yeah. When he talks about that prisoner in the yellow room at the end, he says, well, he couldn't, after he was there for 3 years, he couldn't see the sun without weeping, or look at a marigold or something. And it's like, you can believe it, being in this. Yeah. I mean, it's so yellow.
Like everything, like the furniture, everything that's in there is just yellow. And same thing for the purple room, and like, and then the story, the red rooms and the green rooms and all of that.
There was a movie I watched much earlier in my life that was created in the 80s called The Cook, the Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover. It's a crazy movie, but one of the interesting things about it is all the different rooms in this mansion are all colored differently. But as people walk between them, all of their costumes change to match the new color of the room. And it was just this fascinating trick to it. It was very cool.
I wonder if there was some inspiration there, or if Nicholas Roeg, somebody was sort of like, hey, this reminds me of this great movie.
Yeah. There very well could be.
I love how also between the story and the film, during the masquerade, all the doors are open for all the rooms. So the partiers basically just spread out, and they're in each and every room being debaucherous and, boisterous and dancing and, macking it. And getting drunk, doing all sorts of stuff, except for the black room. The black room is closed for everybody, essentially. And in the film, the only people who go in are Vincent Price, like Prospero, his lover / mentee Juliana, who is trying to become the handmaiden of Satan and does these interesting rituals and things in there. And then Juliana, when she curiously opens the door and sees what's actually in there, and she screams and runs away.
Yeah, that's Francesca, you mean?
Francesca, yeah. Francesca. And then, later, of course, at the very end, that's where he confronts the Red Death figure who's crashed the party and, kind of chases him all the way to the final room and turns around to rip the mask off. And yeah.
before we go any further, let's explain a little bit about the relationship of Prospero, Juliana, and Francesca.
I think that's a good idea because Juliana is a unique, and Francesca are both unique characters here. They weren't in the original story. They were brought into the film to give it, a little bit more depth and some more conflict because they're very different. Juliana and Francesca are like two, opposite ends of womanhood in this.
Yeah, so Francesca she's a peasant girl, and she's pretty much portrayed as an innocent and very faithful, like she wears a cross. And she is initially, in the opening scene, she's given the choice by Prospero as to whether he will kill her boyfriend or her father. That choice is postponed when the Red Death is discovered in her village, and he brings all three of them along to the castle, throws two of them in the dungeon, and gives her a bath. And
like you do to all your victims.
Crucially, in Juliana's bedroom. And Juliana is like, where am I going to sleep? He's like, we'll get you something. And she is positioned immediately to be really jealous of Francesca. She has been his lover and his mentee for who knows how long. But for quite some time, and suddenly he's found a new toy, and he just wants to tempt her and draw her into his satanic cult. And Juliana, like, significantly, when she has a moment alone with him, says, now I'm ready. I'm ready to take the final step. I'm ready to be the bride of Satan. He's like, well, how interesting. Now you're ready. So there's that tension between Juliana and Francesca, who doesn't really know what she's getting into. She just wants to get her father and her boyfriend out of this alive. But Prospero is pitting both of them against each other intentionally, but also just wanting to toy with Francesca and seeing how far she'll go and what she will give up in order to save her boyfriend and father.
Yeah, I think the actress who's portraying Francesca is Jane Asher, and she was very young at the time that they filmed this. I think she was like maybe 17 when they produced the film. So she does an amazing job playing this innocent, this young, very Christian girl who has now been taken into this castle and is essentially she's a hostage. He won't let her leave, and he's been very open with his intention. It's like, by the way, I worship Satan, and I'm going to corrupt you so that you will, choose to follow me in this. And she's like, but I'm a good Christian girl. And he's like, yeah, that's not gonna last. And and Juliana, at times tries to appear friendly or appear kind of conspiratorial with Francesca. And there's a point where she's just branded herself with an upside down cross. So, Juliana's like, yeah, I'm on my way to becoming the handmaid or the bride of Satan. But Francesca, I feel really bad about you being here because you don't belong here. So, I'm going to show you how to save your boyfriend and your dad, and how to get out. And so, like, gives her this elaborate plan so she can sneak through the dungeons and free them, and then they can escape out the castle. And of course, this betrayal, like she's already told Prospero what her plan is, and it's kind of like her final test and how ready she is to be evil. Francesca, don't follow her advice, like something's going to go wrong because she's clearly evil. But you're still on, like, you're still following with the tension, with her as she gets her brother and her dad, by the way, and I do have to mention this because whenever some of these older films or these films have an obvious daddy type character, and this one's her literal father is played by Nigel Green, who also had played Hercules in Jason and the Argonauts. He's a big beefy dude.
Yes, he is.
Also a very, like, accomplished Shakespearean actor as well. But yeah, anyway, so moving on from my little crush, this just kind of proves to Prospero that Juliana, I guess, is ready for her final ceremony, or at least Juliana thinks it should be, but he doesn't agree, and he's like, whatever, because in his mind, he's like, she's just another toy to me. Mm-hmm. Like, she's nothing. And sure, she thinks she's impressing me, but really it's just fun to watch. And then Juliana goes on and in probably one of the more psychedelic sequences.
Yeah.
Performs a ceremony on herself and drinks this potion and hallucinates being on a slab and having all of these various, fringe religious characters from all around the world, like dance up to her and then stab her with whatever implement. So essentially implying that she's being raped by all of these cultures. There's some interesting semi-racist imagery at the time, but it's the 60s. But also it's like, this is very sexual.
yeah. It's very sexual, and it's kind of, the masquerade is just coming up, so you're not entirely sure whether these people exist or not, whether they're members of the party that are already dressed up, because these people are going to be dressing up as mostly. Actually, the dressing up turns out to be mostly masks and fancy clothes, but there's a line or two that suggests you can dress up as. Oh, well, Vincent Price dresses up in sort of Arabian wear and everything, and there's some other cultural appropriation, I guess, going on, but these figures come and they stab her, and she has this look on her face and she's writhing, and it's a combination pleasure, pain, misty, gauzy kind of thing.
Lots of fog and slow motion and
diaphanous
haze.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's I was kind of shocked at how overtly sexual that is, and very very, I guess, European sensibility, because it's very stylized. It's very surreal, very surrealistic. Depiction of her, I guess, her final corruption. Her soul, she physically is being penetrated by all of these men who are non-Christian, clearly. Mm-hmm. They're, there's a shaman, there's a witch doctor, there's a Chinese priest character. Mm-hmm. It's very, very animistic, paganist, that kind of thing. And so it's like, yes, all of these things are now entering her. All of these men are now entering her in some way. And of course, she emerges from this and she announces to the entire castle, now I am his equal. I am Prospero's equal as the bride of Satan. I have more power than he has. And Prospero's like, whatever, bitch, and calls his falcon to just heck at her, and then she dies. Well, she went through all of that, has been torturing herself, and having these horrible traumatic things happen to her, and then he's just sort of like, yeah, you were never anything to me. So just my bird's gonna kill you.
Shredded by a falcon. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And then she's just dead on the floor, and one of the partiers comes down and screams, and he's like, clean her. It's time to clean her up.
Clean this up, drag it away. We're done with it.
We've got a party. You can't dance around this.
Somebody mop the floor.
Yeah.
But speaking of this party, and also just the other guests, there's one guest who in the first half is kind of getting a little bit more focus, and that is the character of Alfredo, who's played by Patrick McGee. And Alfredo's, I guess he's like a neighboring duke or something. He's some kind of, royal figure that's friends with Prospero. And Prospero's like, yeah, this guy gets it. He's all about the sadism, ooh, this will be fun. Let me show you my toys. Prospero unveils a performance of two little people. Well, technically it's one little person and one young child who's pretending to be an adult little person for the sake of the film. But that's actually not from Masque of the Red Death. That's from a completely different Poe story.
Yeah, it's from Hopfrog, which is named after the character of one of the performers, although he's named Hop Toad in the movie. And he and Esmeralda, who has a different name in the story. I think it's something like Thumbelina or something, but it's
Trippetta is the character's name in the story.
But Hop Toad and Esmeralda are they come in, they do or Esmeralda does a dance, Hop Toad does some tumbling, and Esmeralda does kind of a solo ballet dance, and she winds up, well, as she's dancing, things get really creepy because Alfredo is really interested in Esmeralda in a horrible way, where you realize this Prospero's castle may just be Epstein Island. It is just
Yeah. It's very uncomfortable scene.
Yeah,
very uncomfortable scene. Beautifully shot,
yeah,
but very uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's really uncomfortable to watch, knowing, like, it would be uncomfortable anyway. It's uncomfortable seeing two people talk about an adult and fetishize an adult this way. But with that adult being played by a child, it's just another level of creepy. And then Esmeralda, by mistake, knocks over Alfredo's goblet, and Alfredo just slaps her across the face. And it's brutal. The performance ends, but Alfredo gets splashed in the face by Prospero with some wine, just to say, you've overstepped. But also he earns Hoptoad's enmity, and Hoptoad will have his revenge, which is the plot of the Hop Frog is Hoptoad's revenge, Hop Frog's revenge. I'm gonna use that interchangeably.
The Hoptoad in the movie, Hop Frog in the story. And I thought that this was pretty clever. It is like a separate storyline that kind of runs concurrently through the film because, after that initial scene where Prospero and Alfredo are together watching this performance, Alfredo kind of goes off, and that's another story. He doesn't really interact that much afterwards with Prospero. And then you see Hoptoad and Esmeralda sort of cooking up this scheme, and Hoptoad is using the masquerade as an excuse to put his plan in motion. And the actor who's playing them, Skip Martin, does an amazing job. He looks all like, beefy and shirtless in his little attire. But at the same time, he also has this really great performance that is, he puts on the mask of like happiness and like, I'm just being helpful. I'm being, just a good buddy here. But the sinister reasoning behind it, the revenge that he's plotting, is pretty clear, I think, to most people who are watching his interaction with Alfredo. Like there's definitely a false face being put on there. And very similar to the story, the plot point from the original Hop Frog story is that, Hop Frog, being a jester, wants to take revenge on the king and his council by having them dress up as orangutans or gorillas of some sort. Well, Hoptoad in this one does the same thing, but it's just to Alfredo. And it's like, oh yeah, the ladies are going to love it. They're going to scream. You can do whatever you want. You can go wild in this gorilla costume. No one's going to know it's you. It'll be really funny. Everybody will love it. And in doing so, like he basically ties him to a chandelier and then raises the chandelier up and sets the whole thing on fire, including Alfredo. And of course, it's during the party. All the partiers are looking on going, oh, that's horrible, but oh well. And then, Hoptoad is like, okay, everybody's distracted. I'm done with this. And he takes Esmeralda and off they go. And Prospero at that point, he doesn't even try to stop them. He's just sort of like, give that guy some money. He's cool. Awesome.
What a splendid jest.
What a splendid jest. Oh. I thought that was, it's sadistic, but there's also this weird kind of respect that in his household, somebody just committed a very open murder in front of him. And he's like, this is great. I love it. Let them go.
Yeah.
But the creepy, to add to the creepiness of the Esmeralda issue is that they're implied, Esmeralda and Hoptoad are implied not just to be friends and fellow performers, but there's a possible there, and there were some cut scenes. There was this one particular cut scene that had some dialogue that suggested that they were more than friends. And I think even Corman at that point understood the discomfort here and the fact that it really wouldn't be appropriate to show that or to hear that. And so it more just looks like Hoptoad is kind of like, he wants to protect her and he wants to keep her safe. But she's voiced by an adult actress because, again, she's playing an adult character.
And that's really strange. But in one sense, it's very strange to listen to and to watch. But at the same time, it's like, at least it's reassurance that Corman means her to be an adult, and that is That's something anyway. Although we can't find who the name of the actor who voices her.
Yeah, I tried looking her up, and it's just pretty much the information is just the original actress who was playing her, Verena Greenlaw, was just dubbed over by an adult actress, but they don't specify who it was. So it probably was somebody with the production, one of the other day players or something. But this whole film, it was part of a series. This was I think the second to the last of the Poe adaptations that Corman made for American International Pictures, and like the first one was Fall of the House of Usher with Vincent Price, and it ended up being such a huge hit that AIP was like, keep churning them out. Like we're making money off of this. People love it. And it gave an opportunity for Corman to kind of really put his stamp on these stories and the way that he was presenting them. And he liked to have them provide a good amount of social commentary. And, with this one in particular, this came out in 1964. It's at the height of the civil rights movement. You have a large generation gap, younger people that are more frequently turning away and becoming more counterculture. And now in the 60s, you're getting a lot more diversity of thought and opinion. And this movie really kind of fits in there. It's allegorical. You've got a rich white man who kind of ignores the plight of the people below him, but also, doesn't respect and tortures those people who are supposedly on a social strata, but those people themselves willingly and happily apply themselves to this torture because they're like, we want his favor. We love being rich and we don't care. Like, this is fun. We love it.
Yeah, there's a scene where he just gets people to act like animals. He insults them and then says, you're laughing like a braying ass. Act like one. And he does it to a few people, and then the rest of them almost feel left out of being picked on. And so he says, everyone, act like an animal. And suddenly, the whole room is just flapping their wings like a chicken.
Yeah. And it's Corman probably is looking at this going like, yeah, this is very similar to what you get with the ideal, is to basically conform to do what whoever's in charge is telling you to do, even if it's to your detriment. You're willing to give away your dignity so that you can remain safe in these castle walls. You can remain safe. You can remain cared for. You don't have to share your wealth. Everything is provided. And, there's also obviously the moral comeuppance that Prospero gets at the end, and everybody, all of the guests, get that, and it's from a very simple, unassailable antagonist, and that is Death himself, essentially. The Red Death, like, no one can escape this.
Yeah.
So I don't know why you're thinking you're all above it, high and mighty, when you're all just gonna suffer the same fate. But the Satanism was a very interesting addition.
Yes. I didn't expect it. I when I first saw it, I was like, oh, I expected him to be cruel. I expected that. I expected the cruelty, but I didn't expect Satan. And when he first says Satan. When he first admits it, he's talking about the Falcon, and he's like, and he says to Francesca, I worship the glory of Lucifer, the Lord of Lies, and then he just mouths Satan to her. It's just like it's just like one last little thing just to spook. Or actually, I think it might be the devil. I think he says the devil just to spook her. And it's weirdly fun,
I mean, coming from him, you almost don't know if he's just making fun of her because he knows that she's, just a good Christian girl who, is led by her faith. And it's like, this would rock her world that somebody is worshiping Satan. But of course, that is part of his character, is that he is, very, very deep into the ritual and into the indulgence, and, do what you will is his personal philosophy and all of that.
Yeah.
But, at the end, when he first confronts the Red Death, he thinks that he's an emissary of Satan, and he's willing to sacrifice everybody else that's there in the castle. He's like, I'm glad you've come. Like, everyone else is worthless and can die, but like, I'm here to, to worship you. Thank you so much for acknowledging my greatness and my devotion. And the Red Death turns around and he's like, the guy you worship is just one of many. Like, he's just a drop in the bucket. I don't know why you think he would have any power over me at all. And reveals, that he is Death, and Death is unassailable. And, of course, then pulls off his mask, and it's Vincent Price.
It's Vincent Price himself, covered in red.
Just covered in blood, yeah. So it's just, it was a very interesting commentary on kind of like that. And, did it have to be Satan? It didn't have to be. Obviously, it made more sense, I guess, to have like all this cruelty and everything. But I mean, it could just be a comment from Corman that maybe people who adhere to religion is kind of like the be all end all, and like no matter what I do, it doesn't matter because I'm perfect in my faith. And then here comes Death saying like, it's not going to save you.
Yeah.
Like, you're still going to die like everybody else. Like, you're all going to do the dance of death, which again is the second big sort of surrealist scene in this film, where all of the guests who are now, with a wave of the stranger's hand, like they all show the sign of the Red Death by bleeding out of their pores. And they're just doing a slow waltz around in each of the rooms.
Yeah. And eventually all of these figures that are just covered in red, just red from head to toe, other than their clothes, all their skin is red, and they're all reaching for Vincent Price as he's recoiling from them. And it's kind of like Death by Bob Fosse almost, just
jazz hands.
Yeah.
I thought it was just beautifully done, because they're all reaching for him, and he's just trying to get away, like he's going to be saved somehow. There's nowhere for him to go. He's locked himself in his castle, and he's surrounded by 1,000 people who are all like super zombies, just super spreader zombies, just reaching out to him. And eventually they all drop, and it's just him and Death, and Death is just sort of like, bye-bye. Can't escape me. Bye.
And then at the end, the Red Death meets with all these other deaths, like the Yellow Death and the Green Death.
The Black Death.
The Black Death. Yeah. And they're all just kind of talking about their day and how many did you get? And the Red Death, like, lists basically 6 people that survive. A little girl that he is playing cards with when we first see them. A Hop Frog and Esmeralda, Francesca and her boyfriend Gino, and one old man in the village who I don't think we ever see.
We never see him. He's just, he was the one that stayed behind when the rest of the villagers tried to appeal to Prospero's better nature, to have them saved and put in the castle, and he has them all murdered. Yeah. But I mean, it was interesting. And of course, there's the image of the tarot that comes into play, where that's what the Red Death is playing. He's like reading his cards, and he gives, when he talks to the old woman in the very first scene, he pulls up a card and he's like, just so you know, your salvation is hand, Prospero's end is near. And she's like, okay. And then she becomes the first plague victim and infects the whole village. But then at the end too, when he's playing the cards with the little girl, and she pulls up the Fool or something, and he's like, ha, 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 that's fun. Yeah. And of course, like, the final credits are just sort of the laying out of the cards all against the red screen, which is very cool. But yeah, the scene with all the multicolored deaths, I mean, it's just a continuation of like the multicolored room idea.
Yeah.
But I need to go back and see if maybe, because there are many more deaths than there were rooms in the film, I'm wondering if all the room colors from the story are being represented in this, because that would be pretty neat to kind of see if, like, well, we weren't able to build all the rooms, but we could definitely have these people dressed all in single colors. But yeah, I just thought that was pretty fantastic. And I'm wondering kind of I know this was just re-released, funny enough, around the pandemic, around 2021 for digital and Blu-ray. But I'm wondering if, maybe there was a revival of it around the early to mid 80s with the AIDS crisis. I would be shocked if somebody didn't sort of bring this up and just kind of say, like, this is very similar, but from a different perspective. Like,
definitely.
This, the ruling class here is just letting everybody die, while they party, and in Reagan era America. And then at the end, it's like, well, it affects everybody. So maybe you should have helped rather than, locked yourself away or laughed at the victims. But funny that we got, that it really became relevant again in the early 2020s.
Yeah, it is a crazy movie, and because it's so big and broad and bold, it just has a relevance that, you can draw allegories from it everywhere. It just really has relevance when you watch it. You're like, oh, I see where this is going. I mean, there's always going to be a super rich contingent of people that are not caring about other people and not even caring about their cohort, So
Yeah. Thinking that they're above it and who cares as long as they make it out, which we've seen in other films. I mean, we see, example of that in, what was that? Don't Look Up, I think, from a couple of years ago, where there's a meteor headed towards Earth and, the eventual rich elite is just sort of like, hey, we got other plans. Who cares what happens to everybody else? And I won't spoil the end of that. But this movie is definitely encouraging me to go watch some of the other Poe adaptations that Corman has. There are a total of I want to say 7, because you had Fall of the House of Usher first, then you had Pin in the Pendulum, which is another classic that I've heard talked about a lot. Same with House of Usher. Tales of Terror, which is more of an anthology. Premature Burial that came out in 1962. That one I think didn't have Vincent Price in it, but all the rest do. The Raven, which is more of a comedy. I think you were mentioning before we started recording. Haunted Palace, which actually technically isn't Poe. I think that's more H.P. Lovecraft, but they have some Poe poetry in it. The Masque of the Red Death from 1964, and then Tomb of Ligeia is the last one, and that was also in 1964. So between 1960 and 64, you had these movies all put out pretty quickly, and they were all pretty popular.
I think some of them were shot like at basically the same location. Like, we've got this castle, let's
make some use of it.
It works. Yeah. It works.
Yeah.
We know how to light it. Let's go. Yeah.
But that's, I think it's fantastic. And of course, Corman was the king of budgets. No surprise that AIP was, kept returning to have him produce some more of these. But this one was great. I really appreciate you encouraging me to watch it and then coming to talk about it, because I really enjoyed it. And again, it's one of those things where previously I didn't watch a lot of 60s films. I didn't see a lot of that whole era of, more interesting horror and contemplative horror that was in the 60s. Because, again, I spent a lot of time watching those Atomic Monsters in the 50s, the classic Universal stuff, and then skipped to the 80s and missed a lot of the good stuff in the 60s and 70s. And, through this podcast, I've been able to actually get the push I needed so I can go back and watch these classics that I blew off as too campy or not for me or whatever. But man, it's gorgeous. It is definitely worth a watch. It's not scary as a horror film. I mean, it's more about the ambiance and about the tension, but it definitely is a great example of beautifully crafted horror. That low level sort of the whole situation is horrific, but more like, let's think about it kind of
Yeah. You're not, it's not scary, but it can be disturbing sometimes.
Yes,
it's
very
like,
disturbing.
Yeah,
a little. You get the shivers from it. You're like, oof, boy. But yeah. Well, anyway, thank you so much for joining me in the cave today. I really appreciate it.
Well, this was a blast.
Yeah. You've just listened to another episode of the Bear Cave of Terror. And if you haven't seen Masque of the Red Death from 1964, or after listening to us are struck with an irresistible compulsion to watch it again, it is streaming on Amazon Prime, Pluto TV, or MGM Plus, and it's available to purchase digitally and on physical media. And Rob, if listeners would like to get in touch, how would they do that?
Probably the best way to get in touch would be over Blue Sky. I'm at robstaeger.bsky.net. Or bsky.social, I guess it is. Just look for my name on Blue Sky. That's the best way to get in touch with me, I'd say.
Awesome. And you can also follow the Bear Cave of Terror on Blue Sky and Instagram at Bear Cave of Terror, all one word, or send an email to bearcaveofterror@gmail.com. A list of sources will be available in the show notes if you'd like to learn more about the Masque of the Red Death or other Corman Poe films. And remember, always color coordinate your plagues. There is no Paisley death. Good night, everyone.
Scarlatti thought of himself as a good man in many things. And he thought of his wife as pure and unassailable.
I give her to you to do with as you please.
I've already had that doubtful pleasure.